Hey everyone, this is Amber Key, and you're listening to a Bright Idea podcast, a show where I sit down with entrepreneurs to discuss the aha moments that launched their businesses. Today, we're joined by Tye Barrett, owner of Amami, an Italian handbag line. Based out of Los Angeles, California, Tye Barrett is driven by a mission to inspire individuals to embrace and celebrate the imperfections and complexities that make them unique. Through her uniquely designed and Italian-made handbags, Amami's signature collection called Me promotes loving yourself and living your truth. While climbing the corporate ladder, Tye simultaneously raised her daughter as a single parent whom she regards as her greatest achievement. Tye's personal journey aligns with a narrative of self-acceptance as she navigated through cultural stereotypes and learned to take pride in her distinctive path. This journey also fostered within her a deep empathy for others' struggles towards self-love, serving as a catalyst for the inception of Amami. Let's get into this episode. So just starting off, I know, as I had mentioned, you have a background in business. You have your MBA, climbing the corporate ladder. So we'll get into that soon. But I want to give the listeners just a little bit more about your background. So can you walk us through like your childhood and where you come from?
Yes, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and I am a Buckeye. I'm literally a Buckeye. I went to the Ohio State University, in which
Yes.
I obtained multiple degrees, including a journalism degree, and also have an MBA. And I wanted to be Oprah. That's why I went to Ohio State, pursued my journalism degree because I wanted to be the big O.
Yeah.
And as I kind of went there and I'm like, oh my gosh, I left, graduated from college, and then realized, oh my gosh, you have to probably start in like a small town, rural area to really grow into the journalism space. I went for broadcast journalism and love to do interviews and engage with people like yourself, like what you're doing right now on a bright idea. And then I wanted to learn more about the business side. So I graduated from college, went back home, back to my home city of Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
Then I went to and said, hey, I always wanted to work for Disney. So I manifested Disney, was able to work for the big mouse and was able to work there and upheld like marketing positions, home entertainment for those of you that are familiar with DVDs when they existed, who are not too much into this whole streaming space. So I was very lucky to work with Disney. I've also, in my experience, had an opportunity to work with retailers like Guitar Center. I've worked with Signet Jewelers that owns K Jewelers,
Mm.
and Jarrett, all the little malls, just jewelry stores that you see in the malls. Signet Jewelers is the owner of all of them. It's a big monopoly when it comes to buying jewelry and also men buying that engagement and wedding ring.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So I kind of went through this whole journey of loving entertainment, loving the business behind entertainment. Naturally, I like to kind of describe myself as this very creative, analytical person. So I like the best of both worlds. Like I like to see how they get married to
Yeah.
each other. And that's why I start digging more deeper into it. I also had an opportunity to understand it both from a business side and also from a client side. So then when I start working into agencies, I knew how to kind of maneuver that space too. So I am just, I guess, this person that I've learned to embrace every experience I have and make and understand why it makes sense, right? At
Mm-hmm.
that moment, you're like, okay, I switched from one job to another. Some people may think of me being a job hopper. I'm like, no, I just have a great opportunity of getting some great experiences.
Yeah.
And I always felt like the purpose of those experiences so I can go and become an entrepreneur. Like I even learned about cannabis. I worked with two cannabis companies and learned about the product development process and going and working with the manufacturers to do that. And I just basically came to this realization one day. It was like, I want to do something on my own.
Yeah.
And if I go back into my childhood, and I know I'm going a little bit back and forth, but I'm going to tell you how it makes sense. When I
Sure.
was when I was a child, my mom always said that I was very, very stubborn, and I always wanted my way. And I remember when I was a child, and I don't know if you're familiar with the game Simon Says,
Yeah,
right?
of
Yes, and,
course.
and the way that Simon says, okay, Simon says, put your hand on your head, put your hands on your toes. And I remember this video. We had a Halloween party at the house, and Simon, I didn't listen to the rules, and I decided that I wasn't going to abide. She said, Simon says, touch your head, touch your toes. And I touched my toes, and it was like, Ty, you're out. I'm like, no, I'm not out. I told my mom, I said, because at that moment, I've always been very stubborn. I've been very determined. I hate the word no. No is like yes to me. When I set my mind onto something, I follow it through. I give it all of me. I exhaust every resource possible to achieve the goal. And
Mhm,
I say that because I feel who I was as a 5-year-old is still who I am today, with a
mhm.
little bit more experience and maturity in my life. But I am still consistently the same person who says, hey, I am about feeling what's inside of me, right? And basically taking what I have inside. And I'm really in this point of my life of operating in passion and
Yeah.
purpose. And I think that's what we all should do, is find out what's naturally, what's organic, and what is given to us, and asking ourselves, how are we going to take that and give it back to the world?
I love that. And you know what's so funny in just listening to your story is how many parallels you and I have in our stories.
Mhm.
Um even down to the fact that you're from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, but I spent a few of the years in my childhood growing I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, but
Okay.
I used to have a goldfish named Buckeye. So I
Oh,
So I'm very well aware of Ohio State and Ohio State football and how much like domination that you guys have. It's funny too listening to your story and just the paths that you took in sharing like your drive and your experience and the double sides of your brain. But in listening to you share your story, you're such a good storyteller. And one of the things that you had mentioned early on was that originally you wanted to become Oprah. That was like your first idea of what a career was that you wanted to go into. And I can, as a little black girl, I can identify as that with that because everyone wanted to be Oprah.
mhm.
And just for you, as a little girl, what was it about storytelling and what was it about connecting with people that made you want to thought at first that that was what you wanted to pursue as a career?
I always want to be in front of the camera. I guess I'm the child that always want to be the center of attention. I still am that way. I'm a little bit more shy today, or a little bit more reserved, because corporate America has taught me how to do that. Um, I'm always feel like I'm a great entertainer. I love people, and I'm very intrigued about people. And once we start talking about the brand, I can also discuss that, because I'm intrigued in terms of how people think, how they work. Why do they make the certain decisions? It's like the whole going back into my whole marketing is consumer insights, it's psychographics, and it's all about what we're trained versus how our environment impact us. So all these different factors, how they all shape us to being who we are. So as a child, which I remember any opportunity getting in front of camera, I did. So I actually, when I remember when I was in 8th grade for my social study class, and everyone else decided they were going to write a paper. So I made a special request. My teacher, we were interviewing the Amish people. I said, may I go and take my video camera and shoot the Amish people? And the Mennonites, which is, I guess, a special type of Amish people that actually they actually have cars, and they
Mhm.
don't have the horse and buggy. I actually took the camera and I interviewed them and I edited, and I was basically taking a microphone, interviewing them, and I recorded, create myself a package, and we basically play that as my presentation, or as a substitute to my report for social studies. So I've always loved love integrate, engaging with people,
Yeah.
knowing their story, realizing we all have a story to tell. And
Mhm.
that's what was even when I is kind of linking what I am today, like in terms of why I'm bringing this brand to life is because I feel that we all have a story to tell. We all have to go through a journey in our lives. And I'm always intrigued in terms of how did you end up to your current destination?
Yeah.
What experiences in your life?
Yeah.
What ups and downs have you experienced in your life that have brought you to who you are today? So I'm intrigued. I'm like, I think people are like, I don't want to say a science project, but it's just the science that's behind it, the way that we think, the way we operate to me is very amazing.
Yeah, and you have such a unique skill set too, because some people think, or some people are just programmed to be one or the other, to be
Mhm,
creative or to be business brained, but you have both. And
mhm,
it's funny because I studied journalism as well and then went into the advertising side because I wanted to understand the business part of the industry. I think
mhm.
that's so important to understand the business part of the industry because that's how the decisions are made, but it's
Right.
also there's not a lot of us that are on the business side of the industry too. So I'm curious, after you decided not to be a storyteller, not to go into the path of journalism, like how did you transition into the business side? And then talk to me about climbing that corporate ladder.
What I would say in terms of understanding the show business, because one thing about creative people, no offense to anyone, any of your listeners that may be creative,
Mhm.
they have ADHD. They want to create and they're constantly creating, create. And by going through that whole creative process, that there is no limitation. They just want to be freely. It's like me hiring a freelance creative director. That creative director may come out with five different ideas, but there is no restraints behind it. So I was always intrigued in terms of understanding budgets, understanding in terms of managing people, understanding how to think strategically. So if, for example, you think of maybe someone and you can take that from an advertising space
Mhm.
because you have someone that wants to create the artwork, you have the copywriter, you have the voiceover, you have all these different people because there's so many moving parts to create that finished product. And
Yeah.
you have to come to realization that someone has to take control. Someone has to see the big picture. They have to understand where the pieces of the puzzle fall
Yeah.
and then get it into a point of execution. So I told myself, I was like, so I was very intrigued in terms of, okay, this is a creative side. But if I'm writing an article, and I did that at the beginning of my career, I was actually writing articles for newspapers and also for magazines, and I had an opportunity to interview people. But then also I realized that, hey, what about the advertising space? How is this business is being run, right? And we know that that's advertising, placement, it's sales, it's working on different sponsorship opportunities. There's so much different avenues that
Mhm.
have to pay for that particular media channel to operate the way it does.
Yes.
So I kind of was curious about trying to understand the other side of the coin, right? Understand how it operates because I'm this person that's just overly intrigued. So I want to know this whole like ecosystem and how it comes together.
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of use that in terms of my career. So I worked at Disney and ironically, if I could take in one of the positions I had at Disney, I was working in terms of the consumer products. That means selling the different titles into Walmart or into Target. And I understood that knowledge in terms of being an entertainment company and identifying what movie titles was going to work with what retailer.
Mm.
So me working at Guitar Center, I became the retailer. So then I became the receiving end.
Mhm.
We were able to make a determination of working with the buyers, working with visual merchandising in terms of what products came in to the store, what would be a great fit for the audience for Guitar Center. So it always comes down to audience.
Yeah.
It's always coming down to market, it's coming to reach, it's coming to exposure, it's coming to building brand awareness. And at the end of the day, it comes to money. right?
Yes. Well,
So
it's the
distribution,
ROI.
the ROI, distribution, and distribution is going to provide you access to the customer, and the goal is for that customer to convert so you can generate revenue. And that is definitely ROI.
Yeah. It's so funny because this is I my day job is I work in the marketing department, and so I produce promos and sort of like a content creator for my news station. But I do have this business background, and so I'm on a team full of creatives. And my question is always like, okay, but what's the ROI? Like what
Right.
all of these promos that we're doing are like cute, flashy, but like are they getting us more consumers? Are they bringing in more viewers? And it's hard sometimes for me at least to convey that to my team because I think my brain works a little differently, but it's just so refreshing to hear you speak about your journey and that this is what you were doing for a living. What was like in that space, did you have an end goal for your career? Like, what did you think that you were going to do?
I always felt that I wanted to always go back to entertainment. So I feel like the way that everyone living in California, it's very expensive. And I
Yes.
think that I am always around a community of individuals who have 10 jobs. And I felt like, why not get the best of both worlds of being able to climb in the corporate ladder. And then what I would do also is build my consultancy so I can take on those side jobs.
Yeah.
So basically getting the fulfillment in both areas so I can continue to progress and build my experience in the corporate space, but also give myself an opportunity to learn how it is to be very entrepreneurial, and then also give me the opportunity for me to learn about how small businesses operate. So
Mhm.
it's very, very beneficial for me. But what I come to realization that I reach a point in my life, and I've it's the child in me that I always said I hate telling. I love people telling me what to do when I feel that's beneficial, but when I get to the point that I am at a job and I've learned what I need to learn, it's time for me to move on.
Yeah.
And there are some people that are able to stay in a position and retire and from the same company. It's not my discipline because I feel like the way that I am able to grow as a person, the way that I can have the level of agility, the ability for me to also be able to properly troubleshoot, think strategically, is putting myself into different environments. And that means different business cultures.
Yep.
That means when it comes to also different industries, and even when it comes to the organizational structure, that is also important in terms of how I'm able to operate or even navigate in
Mm.
terms of the way that I make decisions, how I'm able to have a little bit more transparency, a little bit more autonomy. There's so many different factors that I've learned in a different corporate spaces that I feel like, why do I need to do it anymore? I'm like, I've at this point in my career that I have enough skills. I may not always be able to think about it and do it as a very specialized role in certain areas, but I do understand every position's function.
Yeah.
Like I'm able to build a team from ground up because of my experiences. I'm able to think of both sides because of my experiences. And I tell myself, I'm like, I would never do anything different because those experiences make me who I am today. So I
Mhm.
appreciate every position I have had in my life because I've worked for small businesses, I worked for Fortune 100 companies. I've been able to travel internationally with some of the jobs that I've obtained. And at this point, I'm like, now it's time for me to take those experiences and use those experiences so I can fulfill my purpose. And I'm definitely in that season of purpose.
Absolutely. I love too that you have had so many great achievements in your career professionally. And I was reading a little bit about your business and a little bit more about you before this interview when you quoted that raising a daughter as a single mother was one of your biggest achievements, separate from your career achievements. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about that and talk to you about raising a daughter as a single mother and why it's one of your biggest achievements.
Because I'd say my daughter is one of my biggest fans of today. She's definitely been my motivation. I was a very young mom, and I was also obtaining a lot of my degrees and climbing the corporate ladder while single-handedly raising my daughter.
Wow.
And because of that, I knew that I had to keep moving forward. There's some people that believe, okay, if I decide to become a parent, that I'm not able to pursue my career. I'm like, no, you can do it at the same time. It requires determination, and it definitely requires a ton of time management.
Mhm.
And I'm a master of time management. I am a project manager from trade, and also a project manager when it comes to life, because I know the importance of when it comes to being a mother, in terms of making sure that I gave her that special mother daughter time. And every weekend she was able to do all her activities. There were times in which I would leave work a little bit early so she could learn how to play the piano or learn how to play the guitar. I am definitely a mother. I love being a mother. I think it is a major responsibility. I think that I have a lot of friends who don't have children, and some of them have missed that opportunity to have children. So I'm very blessed to have her in my life. And I'm very excited because she's now working in the fashion industry, and she is pursuing her dreams, and she has no one holding her back but herself.
Yeah.
And I believe that I have given her the the skills, the tenacity to learn how to work in corporate America. And I don't necessarily she's an entrepreneur, because she doesn't have to be a corporate head, because she's being able to operate freely, which is amazing for her. I
Mhm.
had to kind of do things a little bit differently, but I kept on moving forward, because there's so many people decide, okay, I'm going to raise a child, and I'm just going to take a job so I can make sure that I'm a good mother. But
Yeah.
my daughter always tells me, as an adult, he says, "Mom, you did the best. You're a great mom. I love you. Don't question what you've done. I'm okay." And when she tells me that she's okay, that means as a mother, I feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
And I would have even some of the biggest challenges I've had in my life, I would have never done anything differently,
Yeah.
because I'm very blessed to have her, because she's been my motivation. She's helped me move forward. She helps me not give up. I think when you're in a moment of survival, you think outside the box. That is when you are the most creative. And
Mm.
I think by being a mother, knowing that I had to take care of my daughter, that is what kept me moving forward also.
And so, because earlier you said you were from Cleveland, did you have any family in LA while you were raising your daughter?
No, no, I actually had to build it. I had to build my community, and the relatives that have in LA, they actually lived an hour away.
Mm.
So in Rancho Cucamonga, which is like an hour away in a decent day, with traffic, 2.5, 3 hours away. So
You're talking about LA.
yes, LA traffic is definitely insane in this city. I had to build my community. I was just very lucky, like the school that she attended had before and after school care. And if her school did not have that, never knew what I would have done. I also became have friends that I still have today, and they also were single moms. And what we did was we built community. So if I would drop the kids off, and then maybe she would pick them up. it is about basically building your community, find those like-minded individuals. And the woman that I have met at that time, I am still friends with them today because we have a bond. We have the journey of growing in our careers, but at the same time being mothers.
Yeah. And it's so cool because it's like it's your chosen family. But
Mhm.
also it's also awesome to hear that she is an entrepreneur and that she went straight into entrepreneurship. And I think one of the things you're touching on is like you worked hard so that she could have a choice, so that
Right.
she could have a choice in the lifestyle that she wanted because she was able to see you work hard and give her the resources and find the community. And now she's doing her own thing. I think that that's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. I want to transition into the business and talk about Amami. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Oh, mommy. Yes.
Amami,
It's
which
the Italians always say it, I don't have the accent, but they always say, "Oh, mommy."
I
It's
love
weird
that.
because it's a way of emotion, and it's like, "Do you love me?" And it means love me in Italian, so it's like it's when a person interacts with another person, they're like, "I want you to basically tell me you love me."
Yeah,
And that's what it means, and I didn't want it to think about it the way the Italians about asking someone permission to love you.
yeah,
I'm telling yourself to give yourself permission to love yourself. No
yes,
one else needs to give you validation. That it is your validation and is your connection with that higher power, God, universe, whatever you call it, and what he or she feels that you are who you are of worth today.
yeah. It's so
Mhm.
beautiful. And I want to ask you a question though. Why handbags?
You know what? I was working at one of my jobs, and the crazy story that happened was there was a few years ago in which there were a lot of handbags that had love on it. And I'm like, wow. So it just started with this idea of seeing love on like Gucci bags, maybe Kate Spade. And it was this big era. And it just connected to me. And I'm like, they're putting love on here because there's some type of emotion they want these bags to exude. So I start kind of playing around. Mind you, I don't have a fashion background. I would never say that I'm a designer. I am a visionary
Yeah.
and that I'm the strategic mind behind this brand. But in terms of being designer, that's why I hired some team to make sure I was able to get that executed.
Mhm.
So I was at this place of, I said, okay, what about if I had love? And I said, let's think about some other emotions. So how can we take these bags and really embrace emotion? Because when you are wearing fashion, the point of fashion is about self-expression, right? It is the imagery that you want to project to the world.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start kind of thinking about the science, and here I go back into that analytical mind of mine, is that I wanted to kind of understand, why would someone purchase a bag that says love on it?
Mhm.
Right? If I'm walking down the street, do I want someone to think that I'm a loving person? And do I want someone to give me a hug? Why would you carry a bag like that? So I went through this whole journey of building this brand, building different styles, and then I was brainstorming, but then I had to go through these different exercises. I'm like, okay, how am I going to be able to make a business from this?
Mhm.
And the one crazy thing that happened was as I was kind of going through this whole discovery stage, and there was one bag that I saw on a runway, and I had a meeting with a friend of mine, and I was just killing time. So I stopped into a TJ Maxx. As soon as I walked into the doors of TJ Maxx, I saw the same handbag
Oh my god.
in the front door. So I literally took my phone and I start scrolling down the pictures. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the same photo. And at that moment, I told myself, guess what? This is something that you need to do.
Yeah.
And that is where I came to a realization when it comes to something that is destined or meant for you, it comes to you in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to make sure that you pay attention, and I paid attention. And that was the point when I decided to really pursue it aggressively,
Yeah.
and I start building the brand, from there. But it was all about taking fashion and using as a way of true expression, as true expression, and using fashion pieces as an opportunity of taking not just expression in terms of how you want to be perceived, but also how you want people to see you from an emotional perspective.
And what was the decision behind creating a luxury brand compared to, some of these other brands that we see like sustainability or affordability or what was your thought process behind luxury?
And here I go back into that whole marketing background. And
Yeah.
I wanted to know what that white space was, right? And I wanted to look and see, okay, I had someone that I hired up someone in consumer insights, who does strategy for a major retailer. And I was like, I need to have clarity in terms of the white space. So what we decided to do is I wanted to find out, okay, I wanted a bag. Okay, there's black designers that have handbags, but they were saying luxury. I'm like, okay, how am I going to think about luxury?
Yeah.
Because luxury is a word that is used very loosely. And when I think of luxury, I think of brands like Fendi, I think of Gucci, I think about everything that's made in Europe, and Europeans say, don't say that. That means someone that's made in Paris or Italy,
Mm,
most
mhm.
likely, because in other European regions, that is not acceptable. So what I decided to do, I was initially getting the bags made in LA, and I found some designers locally, and I said, okay, what I'm going to do is if I'm going to call this bag true luxury, I need to go ahead and get this bag sent over to Italy. So I took the bag, and I had someone that worked for Marc Jacobs and other major designers assess the bag. And I said, hey, I just want to make sure that this bag is meeting the quality standards. And she was like, no. And so it made me come to realization that the craftsmanship, the quality, the amount of heritage that comes into the Italian bags, the Paris bags, bags that are even made, like from in London, like Burberry. There is a lot of work that comes into that, a lot of craftsmanship, a lot of love, passion that comes into those bags.
So what are
And
some of the differences though between a a bag that you would get from Paris or Italy and a bag that you may get here that is still calling itself luxury?
well, it's the detail. It's all about the detail.
That's
It's all
interesting.
about the detail. The prime example here is every piece of the bag is this edge painting here.
Yeah.
You're not going to see that in a lot of bags here. It's the custom hardware. It's the gold finishing. This bag kind of and you can also just talk about the structure of the bag. There's a lot of bags that people make that doesn't have a great structure.
Yep, it bends after a
And
while.
it bends and it wears down. Like I can take this back. And then also it's the material. I had to make sure that I went to like 18 different tanneries to search for the leather because I wanted to make sure that the leather had longevity. I wanted to make sure that the bag was going to be able to sustain itself. Because when I think about my bags and when I think about luxury, I'm not just thinking about it from a quality perspective. I'm thinking about it from a classic, from a timeless longevity perspective. So my goal is if you're going to purchase a piece of one of my pieces, I want you to be able to carry that piece 10 years, 20 years from now. Like
Mhm.
for example, if I gifted this bag, if I was actually the customer, I would want this customer to pass this on to our daughter. And that bag would be able to sustain through the test of time with the mother, the daughter, and maybe even the granddaughter.
Yeah.
Because that is the amount of work that I put into the bags. Because I wanted to also think about the fact when Italian companies fashion houses are building bags. They have heritage, they have legacy.
Yeah.
And when I was thinking about Amami, I thought about personal legacies because my brand is not about me celebrating someone else's brand identity. It's about celebrating my customers' individual identities. Like, for example, this bag that I just shared with you is the me bag. And the me bag is about me.
Yeah.
And then if you carried the bag, that me bag would be about you. And
Yeah.
I always feel like they are adornments. They are adorning your body so you can basically showcase how proud you are to be yourself. So it's about personal legacy. And if you're going to build legacy, what that is quality, that is something that's very extravagant. And I wanted to symbolize for the fact that we as people are of value.
Hmm.
And I also want us to think about when it comes to brands. Unfortunately, when we think about brands, we're always thinking about the status quo. We're always thinking about luxury and it's about the affluent. And I want to say to anybody, doesn't matter who you are, if you have the money to spend for my bags, go ahead and purchase one
Hmm.
because true worth is not about external factors in terms of who your affiliations are or how much money you have or what title you have. True worth is internal. So
Yeah.
my mission is for my customers to understand that self-worth is the only worth that's the most important.
I love that. You touched on some really important things just now when you were talking about the concept behind your bags, including self love and acceptance. And I really love that you speak on how you would love your bags to last so that you can give your daughters and generations of people your handbags. And I want to know, in just you talking about the concept and sort of the inception of it, were you going through anything personally that led you to creating a bag that would inspire self acceptance and self love?
I think being a single mom and working in corporate America had taught me the importance of there was some times there were some jobs that I worked at I didn't disclose that I was a mother because I felt that I may not be able to get hired for a position. I didn't want to be stereotyped, especially being black or being a woman.
Mhm.
And life experience and I life be lifing, it taught me that who cares that I am a single mom and I had a daughter very young. I still deserve to be here. But that took a journey, right? I had to go through that journey of self-love. I had to go through that journey of self-acceptance.
Mhm.
And when I was going through really trying to identify the white space and the positioning of this brand, I actually had did a survey. I also did a focus group and I brought in like 10 people in the focus group, people of all different backgrounds and different ethnicities, people from different sexual preferences. And I wanted to ask them, like, why is fashion important to you? Why do you connect to certain brands? And I also inquired from them when it comes to new brands, why do you want to commit to those brands? Because they don't have a reputation yet. They're still trying to get their feet wet. They're still trying to showcase that they're a great investment.
Yeah.
And what I came to realization that the reason why people invested to brands is because they felt a connection with them, especially newcomers. And I also felt that when people are choosing their clothing, or they're creating their whole outfit, their whole ensemble, what they wanted to do is they wanted people to know this is who they were feeling how they were feeling internally today.
Yeah.
Like I remember having someone that would, if she was feeling, happy, she would want to wear something colorful. If she was feeling down or gloomy, she would wear something black.
Mm.
So I got a realization in terms of how what we wear impacts how people perceive us.
Hmm.
And that's also helped me think about the different types of styles that we wear. If you want to be a classic, or you want to be goth, these different people have certain like profiles or stereotypes that are associated to them. And so I wanted to kind of go into that whole science and basically build a brand from there. And I didn't realize that that fashion was so scientific.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that it was so connected to behavior. And I go back to a lot of times when teenage boys would go into high school and they would probably spend their last dollar or they and work their part-time job to buy a pair of Jordans, for example.
Yes.
$200 on a pair of Jordans because they wanted to be fit in. They wanted people to put them into the in crowd. They wanted the girl to give her their phone number and so she can go to homecoming or prom with him. So I
Hmm.
think about what we do with fashion and the influence, but
Yeah.
I also wanted to flip that because I felt that we think that very expensive products is going to define our status. And we need to start moving away from those external markers and start thinking about internally. Because I also want us to go through that journey of internal, doing the work internally, understanding what our self-worth, understanding that in our lives that we are going to have some experiences, good and bad, understanding that as humans, we are imperfect. So I would say that it's more than a brand, it's actually a movement. It is us basically saying we deserve the finest things in life for just celebrating who we are, who
Yeah.
we're to be, and appreciating the fact that we're one of a kind.
I love that. And so I'm curious too, when you decided that you were going to use Italian leathers, you were going to use the best leathers you could possibly find to create this bag that really embodies what it means to love yourself and accept yourself. And I was wondering how you found this family owned factory in Sicily and like how their, ethical production aligned with what you wanted Amami's values to be.
And just FYI, actually shift the factory. I started out with a factory that was in Sicily, but I actually moved over to Tuscany because that is like the prime real estate and location with leather. That is the
Okay.
place where leather is. And I, what I decided to do was I didn't know anything about Italy. And I didn't know, I wasn't familiar with the culture. I wasn't familiar with the language. And trust me, I still have a lot to learn. But what I decided to do was the best way to start is basically assembling a team from afar. So I hired someone that worked for Louis Vuitton for 18 years.
Talk about connections for a second. But go on, continue.
Yes, yes, yes. You LinkedIn, going and learning how to search stuff in on Italian websites and learning how to find different directories. I really was doing some serious digging and I was able to find a few different product designers and product developers. And my product developer worked for Louis Vuitton, and she was able to help me identify the tannery. And the tannery is only invitation only. And because of the relationship she had with the tannery by working with them for Louis Vuitton, I was able to walk through. I was able to get a tour. I had my cameras running. I was a videographer for like 2 hours,
Oh,
just
good.
taking in the culture, understanding the whole science when it comes to choosing leather and looking at other brands and saying, okay, there's different tiers of leather. And if I want the leather to go on handbags, I'm going to have to use cow over lamb. So it was like it was a course. It was like a workshop that I experienced, and I was just like so amazed. And I just felt like a creator. I felt like someone that was doing something big by immersing myself into the culture. And you, mind you, The one thing what they do in Italian culture, they're very family oriented businesses. So they're very much generational. So they're basically, you have generations of factories. Like I have one of the factory, the family's been in business for 80 years, and he had different artifacts of different purses they made like in the 1940s. And that was amazing to me because I always felt like if they understand the history, if they were involved in terms of the archives and the artifacts, I'm like, these people really understand leather goods, and
Yeah.
leather and how they farm the cows is a big deal to them. And I also realized the leather that you use for Coach is not going to be the same leather that you use for Louis Vuitton. It's
Mm.
definitely not going to be the same leather they use for maybe even Kate Spade or another brand that's maybe cheaper than that. So there's different categories. So when it comes to producing the finished product, you have to make sure that every element, every component of that product has great quality. And that's what I did. Every piece is custom made.
So you had mentioned earlier that you're not a designer, you don't have a background in fashion, but you are a visionary. So did you develop the design for the bag, or did you have help with that? How'd you come up with the shape? How'd you come up with the accessories, the buckles, all the things?
So I did hire some designers. So my product developer is also a designer. So she has her own design line. But I also hired some other designers because I wanted to diversify it. Like I have a male designer who designed the hardware. He worked for Coach. Then I had another designer that worked for Louis Vuitton, but she also worked for Celine and also Bottega. So I said, let me have my product developer be the person that helped me interface with the factory. And then I had my designer who was in Paris. So
Mhm.
my product developer was in Italy. Then I had my designer that was in Paris. And I had my domestic guy who specialized in hardware, and he did all hardware for Coach. And then I had someone that worked for Burberry who also helped build my website. So I just put all these people together.
You're just set up for
That's why,
success.
right, strengths and weaknesses,
Yeah.
and basically built these finished products. And then also it was important. I hired someone who had a lot of animation background. Like she was able to create wallpapers. So what I would do potentially is we would have I would maybe try to sketch out. Mind you, I'm not a designer, but I can sketch out a little bit. And then what she would do is create different creatives. We would have, like I said, love. What does love mean to you?
Mm.
And how would you put love on a bag? And that's how we came up with different designs. And what I would do is take those designs and I would poll them with my team. And then we would also potentially include, um, would do some market research and we would make decisions based on that. So everything was regarding, it was team effort,
Mhm.
was conducting research, and it was also identifying what the fashion trends are. Because I also wanted to know, I also took note for the fact that I'm a new brand, right? And if I'm asking someone to spend money on a newcomer, what do I need to do? So I wanted to make sure that I designed bags that were not too trendy, but were more classic. And by designing bags that are very classic, the timelessness, and that means the customer be more willing to invest into the product
Yeah.
because of the fact that they know that, hey, I'm going to be able to carry this bag today, and then maybe 10 and 20 years later in my life,
Mhm.
as I enter another chapter, I'll also be able to carry it. So it was purposely, strategically designed.
I'm curious too, like you have a very human-centered, like emotions and like messages that inspire your collection. Like how do you translate that? Like how do you translate that on a bag?
Right. I mean, you, for example, here, this is the me bag. And I always say this, I said, I don't want people to think about it being too literal,
Okay.
but I wanted to. So the me bag is, it was about being a little bit egotistic. It was about saying that you're the center of your universe. But I like to say, if you want to think about it in a very literal way, each me is like an experience in your life. You can interpret it as an experience, you can interpret it as complexity. You can say this may be an imperfection, maybe this me may have a little bit of a blemish, but all of this makes you who you are. So that's how the literal comes into a very sophisticated, classy design.
Let's face it, starting a business is hard work, and building a website for a business, that's another story. Why not hire some help? 35th Street Builders are not just website builders, they're dreamers. With experience spanning in startups to enterprises, 35th Street Builders will provide you with the mobile app and web development skills to get your business up and running. At 35th Street Builders, they pride themselves on affordability, reliability, and compassion. Ready to take some work off your plate? You can schedule an intro call with 35th Street Builders by going to their website at 3sb.io. That's the number 3, the letter S, the letter B.io. Ready to take control of your financial future? Discover financial freedom with Chosen Advisory Group. Chosen Advisory Group caters to the ambitious, the established mid-career professionals, and those on the cusp of retirement who recognize the dedication required to attaining financial independence. With their experience and clear professional guidance, you can transform your financial goals into reality. Life is stressful. Money should not be. Begin your journey to financial clarity. Schedule your complimentary consultation at www.chosenadvisorygroup.com. How did you bring it to market after you created the product?
I basically, now what part? Production or in terms of
Production, and then after you've done your focus groups, your surveys, your consumer insights, how are you launching this product?
then we built the brand style guide. And what we did was I included a focus group in terms of all the marketing materials, and that was also inclusive of the website, basically getting the navigation, how were they able to move on the website, and also looked at my competition. Like if I want to start competing with the top dogs, I need to know what the top dogs are doing. And
Yeah.
that's what I did. So I did a lot of research on the Gucci's, Louis Vuitton, the brands that I inspire my brand to be. But of course, my brand is owned by an American, also an African American woman, but I also wanted to make sure that it had that level of classiness, and I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make sure that it had an opportunity to be able to compete in that space. So I made sure that we did the whole brand identity based on a very competitive, but also space. I also dealt with the whole go-to-market strategy. I wanted to make sure that as a newcomer who wants, I have to be very creative when it comes to my marketing budget because I basically bootstrapped everything that I've done on this business. So I want to make sure that I'm making sure that I'm doing things worthwhile.
Yeah.
So we I wanted to think about colors and I said, okay, we can produce it in multiple colors, but what color is going to capture my target audience? Because one thing about having the focus group, it helped me really identify who my target audience is.
Yeah.
And then I was able to understand, okay, this is their buying habits. This is how often they're buying new products. This is where they shop, understand what they do on the day to day. And then that is how I decided I wanted to make sure not only capturing who I felt was my primary audience, but also who I also felt was my secondary audience. So I created so based on that, I felt that the me bag was the first bag to kick off because I felt that the bag was multi occasional, multifunctional. The good news about the bag that you can take the strap off and you can carry it as a clutch, or if you want to carry it as a crossbody or a shoulder bag, it has that level of flexibility. But I also felt that the bag had a great design that you can carry it during the day, every day for work. And if you want to go out and go to
Clutch.
a red carpet event, it also has that design that has the ability to have that level of flexibility. So I wanted to let the consumer know because traditionally, when people are buying handbags, women buy probably two handbags a year because a lot of us don't have disposable income. So I wanted to keep that in mind when they purchase my products. I'm like, hey, is an investment. It's great quality. It's going to last you more than a year. It's going to last you 10 years from now, really kind of selling the story
Mm-hmm.
to the clients, to the customers in terms of why it was a great investment. And what I also did was I hired a QA company in Europe. So what we did was we took the product and we put it into this weatherization test. And what they did was they wanted to test to see if the leather was going to be able to stand the test of time. We wanted to make sure that the finishing on the hardware was not going to change throughout the years. So we put a lot of work in place before we went also into production. So we did a lot of QA work.
If for the
And
listeners that don't know what QA work is, what is QA?
it is quality assurance.
Okay.
That
That
means
is so I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's so they don't complain and return items, right? That
Right.
means that it's true quality.
It's so interesting you're running us through all of the processes, and I think what's interesting is that you have a background in the audience insights of the psychographics that you're already thinking like 10 steps ahead,
Mhm.
and kind of doing that sort of risk mitigation so that you're not running into these problems later on. But for someone who doesn't have like a background in research or insights or all these things, like what sort of tips do you have for someone wanting to start a handbag line? Like what are what should they be thinking about, or how can they gain these skills that you've been able to attain from your previous careers?
Know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and know when you have to hire an expert. There's people that live and breathe. I actually had a 9-member team. So I had someone, um, I hired a company that has a QA background. I hired someone that has a manufacturing background. I hired someone that had product development, a creative background, a market research background. I wanted to hire the specialists because those people live and breathe a particular skill set. I know it from a high level. I know how each person works together to help complete a task, produce a project, or complete a product. But I'm not able to think about it from a tactical perspective. So I know that there was going to be some weaknesses that I had. So that's why I brought in those additional resources. But today I'm pretty versed. So I know what to look forward to. So I always tell someone if you're going to start business, it's very expensive. So know that there is so much that had to be accomplished on building a product line because you have to go through that discovery phase. You have to understand where your product positioning, where is that opportunity, basically in a nutshell, what is that white space? You
Mhm.
also have to know what the trends are. It's so important for you to know about that industry, know about who your competitors are, and then based on that information, make the determination on what that product you're going to create because it's a big investment. It's a big investment if you are going to go international. Domestically, it's going to be easier because you're on the mainland. But when it comes to the international space, you have to consider the fact how you're going to ship it and how shipping is going to and basically impact the cost. When it comes to lead time, when you're working with a manufacturer, you need to find out when their times of peaking. So maybe in January, they're shut down. They shut down for a whole entire month in the month of December and also in January. So if you're trying to get some products produced during that time frame, you need to make sure that you are producing a schedule that's realistic, that's feasible. And you
Mm.
also have to think about it from a seasonality perspective. We know that the primary seasons are spring, fall, and summer. So you have to basically back schedule your product production based on that.
Mm.
You have to consider shipping. You have to consider so many variables. You also have to figure out if you are having a team member that is freelance, realize that if they're freelance, they're committed to other projects. So you have to think outside the box and you have to think beyond yourself. That is so important because thinking beyond yourself is going to be how you're going to have that longevity. If I just thought that's the reason why I'm good as a visionary because I'm able to know what everyone's responsibilities were. And then I was also able to make sure when I hired those resources that we had clear understanding of everyone's roles and responsibilities. And it's so important for you to define the responsibilities of your team members
Yeah.
because there's times in which there's a little bit overlap, but by you creating a contract, making them sign the contract, making sure that you protect your information because you have a lot of trademarks or proprietary information that needs to be protected, letting them know that this is a project and you don't own anything to on it, that belongs to me and also to the business. So it's just very important for us to basically all of us that want to become entrepreneurs in the product space, make sure that you have a good understanding on what you are building, who you're connecting with, and make sure that whatever you're creating is going to give you the ROI that you need.
What you're referring to is not only growing a business, but scaling a business
Yes,
and being able to delegate tasks to other people so that you, as the founder, can do what you need to do to run the business and do all the things that you're good at on the back end. You
right.
mentioned earlier that you have bootstrapped this business. How much do you think you've put in to this business from your own money?
A lot.
A lot.
A lot. Trust me, it's very expensive. Because just think about it. I was in Italy and just staying in the hotels and traveling. I traveled to 7 different regions in Italy to build this brand and I also traveled to Paris and I
Yes.
traveled to London. That in itself, put that way, cost me 40K. All
Mhm.
right, just to handle the travel expenses. And then when you think about when it comes to production and being a newcomer and really trying to sell yourself to a manufacturer that has no background of you and the fact that there's no law that protects you in another country. The law of the land of the United States protects me against a manufacturer in USA, but it doesn't protect me when it comes internationally. So when you are producing something internationally, you have to make sure that you find ways of protection. And that is by drafting an agreement, some type of contract. Um, so because of that, I had to have my different suppliers sign contracts information to help protect it. I also negotiated the payment terms and how we paid things because I wanted to make sure that it was beneficial for me and also beneficial for them. I always say never pay upfront, maybe give them a deposit and you agree with them what that deposit is. And then once you are able to approve the quality and you feel that the product is marketable, then at that time provide them the balance. So it's a negotiation game.
Yeah.
And it's a game that as a newcomer, you have to be very pretty versed and you have to make sure that you think outside the box. And you always have to think about the other side, right? So if I'm a manufacturer and I am learning about this new company and she's an American, why do I want to take a risk on her? Why do I want to basically squeeze a production order for her for Gucci? And I know Gucci's a very credible company. So it's really about relationship building. It's about having the strength and having the confidence to say this is a business that's going to do well. And you kind of have to be a little bit braggadocious. You have to sell yourself, you have to sell your business, you have to sell your vision, you have to sell everything
Yep.
to really get the buy-in, especially to someone that's not culturally used to someone like myself. And to be honest, there's not a lot of African Americans that are really maneuvering through the Italian space. So it just from a parent's perspective, it took a lot for me to
Wow.
really work in the Italian market because I went into a lot of areas in which seeing someone that looked like me was almost impossible.
Did that discourage you ever?
There were some scary moments, because you realize that, you appreciate communication, right? And that means the use of communication and, the importance of having a cell phone. There were times in which my cell phone didn't work. There were some, like, I actually drove in Italy, and so there were pockets in which the reception wasn't good, so you would have to invest into a SIM card, but then I was scared to put the SIM card into my phone because I didn't want
Yeah.
my original one, so the communication and the safety and being different, it was scary, but I just believed in God, and I believe that having the faith and felt as if I was operating in purpose, that everything was gonna be okay. I continuously had to give myself pep talks because I did put myself in some very unsafe environments. For example, a factory, one of the factories that I worked in, it was in a very country area, and the subways, went down and no one spoke English. And I had to communicate to this guy. He didn't understand. I tried to use Google Translate. It wasn't working properly on the phone. And I basically communicate to a guy who did not know English to how to get onto the next train.
Oh my.
And so from that perspective, I said, if you are going to travel somewhere in which people don't look like you,
Yeah.
K don't overdo it, okay, when it comes to traveling. If you shop, you make sure that you ship your belongings back to the States. It's very important for you to just make sure you're just aware and try to blend in as much as possible because
Mhm.
they are able to pick up people that are visitors, so who are tourists. So just make sure that you are trying to embrace that culture as much as possible because that's going to be the only way that you're going to be able to navigate it. So I had to fake it a little bit. So I had
Yeah.
to learn about at least basic Italian words so I could be able to buongiorno and be able to say, hey, this American knows a little bit of something, but there was times in which I definitely felt displaced.
Yeah. And in the same vein of going to places where people don't look like you, there's culture shock, there's so many barriers. You're talking about language, you're talking about a lot of things. In
Mhm.
that same vein, oftentimes in funding and building capital for your business, you're also in spaces where people don't always look like us. I'm wondering, now you've been bootstrapping this brand for a while. Have you looked into other sources of funding? And what has that experience been like for you?
I have. I've been thinking, I thought about it from pitching perspective, thought about it from crowdfunding perspective, if I ever wanted to do that. I thought about it from just obtaining a loan. I think just domestically, people are able to resonate. I think people are impressed for the fact that I traveled to Italy and I actually produced a finished product. Because I think a lot of times when it comes to entrepreneurship, people have a ton of ideas, but they don't necessarily execute those ideas. And since I showed that I executed that in itself, was amazing to them because what that does showcases that I have determination and I am determined to get things done.
Yeah.
I think also at the same time, because of my corporate background and the fact that I've been able to work in many different spaces, that also brings a level of trust. It showcased that I am very entrepreneurial and I'm also able to be a great problem solver. So that in itself has helped me, as a person. So I think that it's everything
Yeah.
in my life. That's why I'd say everything in life has its purpose. You have to understand what the purpose is, and everything is building blocks into what you need to do.
Looking ahead, what are your plans for expanding the reach and the impact of Amami, both in terms of product offerings and the underlying message of your brand, which is self-love and acceptance?
So I always say it's a movement. It's not just a brand because what I envision, Mommy, is to be a brand, a global community of people that accept people for who they are. So it's a journey of self-acceptance. It's like saying someone that may be straight and welcoming someone that's part of the LGBT community, or welcoming someone that may have a disability, someone that come from a different ethnicity, and realizing that the world is a melting pot.
Yep.
So I want a mommy to be a melting pot of people, because that is what makes the world a great place, is that we have different experiences, we have different ideas that makes us who we are. And if we were all the same, the world would be a very boring place. So my goal is to basically create a world of self-acceptance. So I really envision this brand, and it goes back into even my journalism world. And this is how that comes back to life, and why I'm going kind of in this full circle moment is because there are stories to be told, right? I want people to basically use the brand as an opportunity to kind of talk about that self-love journey,
Yep.
because maybe my testimony is going to benefit some one of your viewers, and maybe one of your viewers have a testimony that they want to share with someone else. So I want us to start embracing who we are and everything that makes us who we are. It's so important to do that. Self-acceptance is embracing everything, all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, the imperfections. So that's what my goal is. Now, in terms of the growth, I want the brand to not just be a brand that is domestic. I want us to have it in Europe, and have it in Paris, and have it into the stores, and even have it in South Africa, or have it in Ghana, because everyone loves luxury. And
Yes.
I think that everyone still needs to understand the importance of self-worth and basically embracing who they are. So I want to continue to create products that are human centric and very celebratory of who you are as a person. I also am expanding it more into male markets, because I also know that they go through that journey of self-love.
Yeah.
We all, that is not just a female thing. We're just more emotional as women, but men are emotional beings too. So it's important for us to build products that also connect to them. And when men see the bag, they're like, okay, I want a backpack, I want a wallet. So I
Ooh,
am
yeah.
also going to be tapping into the space. And then the fact that we're in a society in which people are non-binary, they don't want to be a male or female, they just want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to create products that are very accepting. So to me, I always feel like I'm a brand that's very welcoming. I'm like, as long as that you have the disposable income to afford my products, or if you want to say, hey, if I'm going to treat myself to the product, I welcome you, because I welcome you to celebrate you all for who you are.
I want to, before I let you go, get into rapid fire. I want to play a fun game with you real quick, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
What would be your dream collaboration?
Dream collaboration. I have a few. I wanted to connect with beauty brands, because I feel that a lot of those have similar mission statements like I do. I can, one that I have top of mind, I say pattern, like Tracy Ellis Ross, because what I appreciate about her is that she is a woman that's authentic, and I love the journey that she's kind of going through with herself and also with Black women. And when it comes to hair, like for example, I know she did a big documentary on Hulu. So I definitely want to find those like-minded brands, beauty brands, maybe as a hat brand, but I want to build with other accessories or other products that helps bring the beauty and help people go through that journey of internal beauty.
Mm.
And also in terms of self and having that free self-expression connected to them. So I definitely want to do that. I also want to put a little philanthropic aspect behind it, because storytelling, it's not just about making money, it's about making the world a better place.
Yes.
So what I foresee myself is basically using the brand as a great opportunity to partner with a company that may, an organization that work with disabilities. It's like finding a great influencer that is like very confident in their skin and saying, yes, I may be confined to a wheelchair, but I'm still beautiful.
Love
I
that.
still look good. I'm still Gucci from top to bottom or whatever else. And they really have not taken their disabilities have not changed them for who they are. And they still have that confidence because that person say that they were born with a disability and someone may get into a car accident and may be paralyzed. And that person sees that video of that and they connect. The connection says, I'm going to accept this is where I'm at today, but that means that I'm still of value. I'm still of worth.
Oh,
So
I love that.
I want us to help each other by the storytelling, by being people of influence, by being of community. Even when it comes to the LGBT community, and that is also an important community because we have so many people that are struggling through that journey, especially in the rural areas. The metropolitan areas is more accepting, but when you go into the rural areas, it's a different story.
Yeah.
So you connect with that individual.
Yeah.
Maybe what they do is see a social media person like, look, when I become 18 years old, I'm going to move to LA or New York because that's where my community is. That is where people accept me. So I am using my brand as a vehicle to make the world a better place. And that's my way of being a change agent. And if it's through luxury leather goods, that's how I'm fulfilling my purpose is booting up self-esteem because I came to a realization I've had people that have purchased my bags and who have said, I was feeling down for at that moment. I was experiencing low self-esteem, but I bought your bag because I needed to feel good about myself.
Mhm.
So when they carried one of my bags, they're like, oh my gosh, I am feeling good. I'm feeling proud. I'm walking with posture. I'm walking into the world very confidently. And that is what I want my brand to do with people is make them feel comfortable for who they are and also just comfortable and who they're destined to be.
I love that, Ty. That's like that's amazing. Um, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Live in purpose. Life is too short. And by knowing the fact that life is too short, I've lost a lot of loved ones. A lot of my loved ones is not here. I always go back to my grandmother. May she rest in peace. She always wanted to be a dancer. And every time she brought it up throughout my childhood, even into my adulthood, and I love my grandmother. I admire her. She helped raise me so my parents could work. So she was definitely a crucial person in my life.
Mm,
But what I heard from her was the fact my grandfather was the provider and she was the housewife. So she took care of the home, she
mhm.
took care of the children, but she did not take care of herself. That means that she did not fulfill what she wanted to fulfill. And you got to realize that she was at a different time, a
Yep.
different era. Women didn't have those decisions. She was born before women's rights. And so she was forced to live a life that she didn't really choose. She was not the author of her life. So because of that, I did not want to be her. And I love her. I didn't want to be her in terms of choices. And I felt like my ancestors have sacrificed so much for us to be who we are today. I have a choice. I have the opportunity to say, this is who I want to be when I grow up. I can have the opportunity to say, this is this chapter, I'm going to work at Disney. That chapter, I'm going to work for a Guitar Center. And this chapter, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I have that ability to be that person. So if my ancestors have made the sacrifices, and if we've had women's rights, if we had civil rights eras, and we've had many people that have lost their lives to be who we are today,
Yep.
why not take advantage of it?
Yeah. And you're a living example of that too, and like how you raised your daughter and how she's able to write her own story because she sees that you are being able to live in your purpose and create the life that you want.
Mhm. Very true, very true. And
So powerful.
she's amazing because she says, "Mom, I am not a corporate person. I am creative and I'm very free and this is what I'm going to do." So I love that about her, that she has the ability to be free and she is not conforming. She's able to wake up in the morning and make whatever decision she feels she wants to make, but I'm like, make sure that you're making responsible
Mhm.
decisions and you're making decisions that are going to continue to help propel you in your career. But she is able to make so many decisions that I didn't have the ability to make, not as quickly as I liked. And my grandmother definitely wasn't able to make. So I always feel like this younger generation should embrace and appreciate the freedom and the sacrifices that were made from our ancestors.
Yeah, I love that. What's the biggest mistake you've ever made in business?
Um, Trusting others, right? I think I should trust myself, right? And you realize that when it comes to business, there's a lot of people that are haters. There's a lot of people who judge you or judge your decisions based on their personal experiences. There are a lot of people that live in fear. And I feel like you should trust your instincts because I feel your instincts are your intuition, your inner God, whatever you call that's inside of you, that is where you should operate. Because we depend on others so much when it comes to making our decision. You can talk to them and you may be able to receive a consultation, but internally you have to feel comfortable in the decisions that you make because it's your life, it's your business, it's your journey.
Yep.
You have to understand that. So when you start sharing your ideas or sharing your purpose to others, be prepared that there's going to be people that are very opinionated. There's going to be people that are going to discourage you, but it's your responsibility to follow your instincts, follow your inner God, and go from there.
I needed that one. So thank you.
You
This is my last one. If you could say something to your younger self, what would it be?
It's going to be okay.
I like that.
Because I have experienced life. I've had plenty of adversity, but I've always made it through and trust the process. And it's interesting. My daughter one year bought me a bracelet, and one of the bracelets stated trust the process. And there's times in which I have to carry the bracelet, may not match well with my outfit, but sometimes you got to keep yourself centered, keep yourself focused, and
Mhm.
keep yourself in a moment of gratitude and like everything's going to be fine. Because what's the worst thing that can happen? Yeah, I have a roof over my head.
Yeah.
If I need to go back to corporate America, I'll go back. I have choices. I have an education. I have my health. I have my family. I have my friends. I have a great support system and I am going to be okay.
Mhm.
And that's why I like to tell other people, like, if you have the basic essentials, you are okay. You're fine. And that's part of life.
Yeah.
Life is not easy. And those back and people always think those setbacks are learning lessons. And if you don't get those learning lessons from them, you're not going to progress. You're not going to succeed. So take that and embrace it. That's very important.
Trust the process. I love that. It reminds me of this quote that I keep close to me, which is it's similar. It's like you've survived 100% of your worst days. And
Yes.
and I love that because I'm like, wow, wait, that's true. Like in my lowest of lows, it sucked, but I made it out. And this too shall pass. And so I think trust the process is a very similar reminder that you will be okay. Where can people find you?
You can find me on my website, which is Amami Luxury, which is spelled AMI luxury.com. That's also the same handle on Instagram. But the best way I've been trying to tell people in terms of thinking about how to properly spell it, am I. So if you think about that, and the fact that the brand is all about you and it's very human centered, and I built the brand for you to
Yeah.
celebrate you as your brand. So if you want a brand that is about self-love, a brand that you don't feel that you have to conform to purchase the products,
Mhm.
Amami is the brand to make that happen for you.
Mm. Ty, this was amazing. There's
Thank
so many
you.
nuggets. I already knew our episode was going to be great together, but I just from the similar interests, the similar parallels in terms of our careers, just your journey and the knowledge you've been able to instill for my listeners today. I'm really excited for everyone to hear and to purchase your products. And I'm really glad that I met you that one day in LA.
And you know what? That our paths. And just to be honest, when we were walking past each other, you were exiting and I was entering, and we locked eyes and we connected. So you have to understand the purpose of every connection, and we had a purpose. And I'd like to always embrace that and appreciate that. So thank you for calling me and emailing me and saying, hey, let's get on and let's have a chat and learn about you and learn about your story and learn about the brand. I am so thankful for that, for you, for giving me this opportunity to build more exposure and help me fulfill my mission with this brand.
Absolutely. That's why we're all here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. That's it for this week's episode of A Bright Idea Podcast. Today's guest was Tye Barrett, owner of Amami Handbags. You can support Tye and her handbag line by going to her website at amamiluxury.com. That's spelled AMAMI luxury.com. If you like this episode, please let me know in the comments or like and subscribe on YouTube. Until next week, I'm Amber Key.